The rumors are done, the speculation's over, the tweeting is all over, the insiders have all insided and having their beers, and now the trade deadline has been completed, and we're here to talk about it. What happened, what didn't, and all of that sort of stuff. Hello, welcome to the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook, the Hockey Podcast, Instagram, podcast_hockey as well. And Tyler, were you traded today?
Nope. No, still on the same beer league team.
Oh, right.
They haven't gotten rid of me yet.
Were there rumors that you were traded?
One of these days they're going to trade me up to old timers, I think.
Yeah, that can happen. Chris, how are you? Or were you traded?
Nope. I am still here.
All right. Sean, were you traded?
No, I exercised my no trade clause.
That's fair. Devin, did you waive?
I waived, yes. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And Heidi is out on doing Girl Guides, but I think no matter what her day was, it may have been good, it may have been bad, but just remember, if your day sucked, always just remember this.
On an actual National Hockey League game to a 42-year-old team hockey driver who works for them!
Just always just at least remember that your day could not be as bad as that. I'm keeping that clip forever, by the way. I am using that in so many. That is an inspirational quote. Thank you, Steve Dangle. Anyway.
That was very high pitched.
Yes, that was as high as I've ever heard him.
Holy.
Yeah.
Regardless of your opinion on Dangle, that was just legendary.
That's the rant. That is the YouTube video of the year for 100% sure. 100%. That's the YouTube video of the year. That was so great. So great.
Oh, well, I mean, just very quickly, Kevin, I mean, the Twitter meltdown unfolding over that on Saturday was quite something. And then to hear the Hockey Night panel just rip the Maple Leafs was also quite something over that.
Maybe we just need to go here now. Let's get it out of the way. Devin, the Leafs fan?
You know what? I'm going to go the positive route first. As a human story, that was fantastic. Happy to see David Ayres, live his dream out, and I guess he didn't have a good start. 2 goals on 3 shots, which was a little hard to see, but he was able to pull out the W for Carolina. But as a Leafs fan and watching on, it was very hard to just witness that, and the lack of try and the lack of shots on net was very hard to watch. But I mean, give credit to Carolina and being able to shut down the Leafs offense. Even before Ayres came in net, there were signs of them not playing to the full potential and not being able to get up for such an important game is frustrating to watch, let alone have a beer league ZAMBONI driver goaltender beat them and get the win for Carolina. So it was I don't know. I was surrounded by a couple Leaf fans when I was watching, and everybody was just losing their mind. And it was hard for me because I cheer for the good storyline good majority of the time, and it was let's have this. I hope this guy does well, David Ayres, but obviously would rather have the Leafs win at the end of the day.
Sean, Chris, Tyler, do you have any thoughts on what happened?
I'm just glad that the Canadian Tire ad finally came true and we got our own Albert.
Yes, that's actually true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
I feel like I need to now get some goalie gear and start practicing and get a part-time job as a Zamboni driver, and maybe I'll be able to get a win versus the Leafs.
Now, was that not the same guy that was in that commercial with John Tavares sleeping at the arena and he was driving a Zamboni around him?
Oh, for the love of God, are you kidding me?
I thought that, because I thought I seen that circling or around the Twitterverse there briefly at the time, but maybe I have that wrong. But if that's the case, oh my! But
yeah, if that's the case, that is epic.
Yeah, I may have that wrong though. But anyways, on a more serious note, I mean, it just goes to show that there's a lot more to the Leafs than one thing or this or that's causing them problems. I mean, the team seems to be constructed rather flawed. I mean, for them to not be able to flip the switch and just pepper the goalie with shots is quite remarkable. And I don't know. You have to sit back and wonder what Mike Babcock is thinking right now about all this.
Mike Babcock and Lou Lamoriello.
Yeah.
Although Lou was super busy today.
Yeah, Lou had other things on his mind. He may have been overpaying for third line centers, but we'll get to that in a moment. Chris, what did you have a?
I didn't have like a poignant sort of observation, but obviously it's super entertaining, and you, like Devin was alluding to, you got to feel good about that story in general. To be, a journeyman beer league goalie that just happens to be the Zamboni driver for the Marlies, and then to have that happen, like, you just got to feel good for the guy. And yeah, just a feel good story.
And kudos for the Carolina Hurricanes, how they celebrated him on social media. They're going to celebrate him in a home game. I think that's great, and I think that may have been a turning point for the Hurricane season, considering what happened here at trade deadline for them as well. But Devin, I'm going to throw this to you. What are the chances in this offseason that the name Austin Matthews comes up in trade talks?
I'm going to say 0. He has too much skill to. I don't know. He's too important to the team for that to be an option. I would say Nylander and Marner would be higher up on that potential trade list than Matthews would be.
There is something wrong in that locker room. And
It's not the locker room, Kev.
What's that?
It's not the locker room. It's just how that team's built.
I think
that's what I think.
I disagree with all of you. I agree with Kevin. I disagree with Tyler and Sean because it's the character that's in the room. It's the drive that each player has. Yeah, I watching Marner on a power play trip and stumble, and then trip and stumble again. And I don't know. It was just God. It has to do with the character of the team. It doesn't have to do with the way that it's constructed. If you're talking about the character of the team being constructed that way, then yes. But I don't know if it's the construction or more so than the character of the team.
For me, it's definitely a little bit on that what you're going at there, Dev. I really think that the Leafs just don't have enough of those character glue guys. The Tyler Motts, the Andrew Mangiapanis, the ones that just don't give up and just find a way to. They need more Charlie Hustles is really what they need. They need people and players who can lead by example, to go through a wall to have this team win. They don't have that. They've got a bunch of really skilled players who aren't willing to go through the wall to change their game to fit what is needed to to be successful in the NHL. This is one thing that I've always, especially the past few years, felt that a lot of fans and bloggers and the new world media seem to forget with all these analytics is that getting the right mix in the room is huge. Getting a couple of guys who can just, like I say, go through the wall. Like they'll block a Shea Weber slap shot. They'll bust their ass after a 50-second shift and back check to get back and negate a goal. I don't see that from the Leafs right now, and that's the biggest issue. Right, is that it's as I think. As much as as much as I'm not the biggest fan of the old school mentality that Jeff O'Neill has, I think I agree with him in that every game seems like more of just of a skills competition more than anything else, and not an actual game.
Right. So, given all of what you said there, Sean, I mean, is it the players that are there? Is it their fault that the mix is wrong, or is it management?
Management. It's Dubas going too hard on the analytics side and not letting and not understanding that you need to find that right mix and finding a couple just hardworking grinders that can the plumbers of the league. Like I said, Tyler Mott is a great example of that. Every time he's gone out of the Canucks lineup, that fourth line has struggled, and every time that fourth line has struggled, the team has struggled. Yeah. So I just really think that you need to find those players, and on the Flames, you've got Andrew Mangiapane as a great example as well. He's a smaller guy, but he mixes it up every time. He's in every game, and he's starting to get rewarded for it, and he's starting to look like a really good top second line player. But right now, who on the Leafs is willing to go through the wall to make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and question the commitment of a Tavares or a Marner or a Matthews, but they're a certain type of player, and there's other elements that are missing there.
So, Sean, I'm going to have a little fun with this and maybe put some words in your mouth. But what I'm hearing with you describing how the Maple Leafs are built, I think you might be suggesting that they're built very similarly to how the Edmonton Oilers were in the early 2000s, around the 2010s.
Very close to how the Oilers are built right now, too.
Yeah, but we'll have to get into where they're at. I guess the reason I brought up the idea of Matthews is to me, I do think Dubas needs to take some blame here. The way he constructed the lineup, front loading everything, that was already at nauseum. But and I think he admittedly had to acknowledge that they needed some grip because they brought in Kyle Clifford to do just that. But it's almost like I feel like the biggest miss in Toronto right now, we'll argue about what he did maybe a little bit later, but what Lou Lamoriello brought to the Leafs organization was a sense of professionalism that I don't see there. When Lou Lamoriello was with the Leafs, this team just looked like serious. Like, it was a serious thing to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. Like, you can mock you having a dress code or not, but it just felt like the Toronto Maple Leafs were in a very serious position. And like this, we're going to be a very serious professional hockey team. Now I think the Toronto Maple Leafs it's not only that they're playing like a beer league sort of skills competition thing. It's almost like they are privileged. They are the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it doesn't matter if the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup because they're the most popular team out there. So it doesn't matter. They've gotten sort of this laissez-faire, like, we're really cool. And I think part of that is sort of with Austin Matthews. I don't know. There's just the combination doesn't rub right, and I wonder just how everything was handled. I'm not going to bring up specifically that controversy, but I am going to bring up that controversy. How the Austin Matthews situation was handled, I wonder if it gave this team a sense of we can do whatever the hell we want. It doesn't really matter. We're the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, I think there's some of that, but also, they quit on Mike Babcock to get a type of coach that they is more preferable, I guess, in Sheldon Keefe. And Sheldon Keefe's not, from what I can tell, the hard-ass type of coach. So they stopped responding to the hard-ass type of coach, and now they're not responding to this coach.
Yeah, I would say it's like they aren't willing to pay attention to the details, and again, that goes back to those Charlie hustles, because they know that they're a game away from being out of the league, so they do pay attention to the details while just giving every effort that they can.
I don't know if I agree with your guys' take on that. I'd say good on Dubas for trying to reinvent and recreate a hockey team that is purely skill-based, which is what the league is trying to promote, more skill and less, run-of-the-mill, maybe not run-of-the-mill, but hockey players that are, goons, and you have to, your bottom six has to just run people over, and which is and I'm not saying that it's not part of the game, but to Sean's point earlier, you have Zach Hyman who would run through a wall to get the team to win. I feel like there's an understatement of Mikheyev, even though this is his first year in the NHL. You could tell at the beginning of the year he was a difference maker for the bottom six. You have the Pierre Envals, who are cut from the very similar cloth as Mikheyev. I don't know. It's frustrating to watch, and it's easy to nitpick because of the difference of ideology between, I guess, maybe not every other team, but the majority of the NHL as of right now. You do need your role players. You do need to have that structure to the game. But I don't know. I have a hard time hearing the nitpicking of the GM of Keefe, because it's Keefe hasn't even, he came in halfway through the year. It's hard to solidify a structure, to solidify, a complete different change between Babcock and Keefe's playing styles and their coaching styles. And I see it game in and game out, but I feel like they haven't had the chance to really show how good they actually are. It's whether or not, what I'm seeing from game in is the lack of give a shit, the lack of character of wanting to fucking win. Sorry for swearing, but that's how frustrated I am. It's every game that, Matthews oh, okay, well, maybe, I'm not going to try tonight, or Marner, I'm not going to try tonight, or, it's not clicking for them. So I don't think it has to do with management. To a certain extent it does, but not entirely. At the end of the day, it comes down to the players and how they want to play.
So Devin, on that, it's not management. Well, who signed the really big contracts with Matthews and Marner? I mean, they're getting paid. What's the motivation for them now, other than personal pride, which there should be lots of. But you're suggesting that their give a damn factor is not high enough. Well, they're getting paid. Well, who signed the contracts? I mean, to me, that you still have to point the finger back at management at some point.
That's valid. It's whether or not they want to win a cup or not.
Deal, I understand that he was a free agent. There's a bidding war. You want to get him, you got to pay the price. But the other two guys, different situation.
Yeah, and they haven't proved themselves yet. But at the same time, there's a bunch of young players that are getting paid right out of their RFA status, and they try. I guess they tried to get ahead of it, and the way that the league is trending, and the way that the salary cap could go, that these could be not bargain deals or anything like that, but trying to get ahead of it, I guess, for the long run. But I do see where you guys are coming from. It's just give some credit going the other way as well, I think.
I mean, a couple things to add to. I mean, I still think they're going to make the playoffs, and it's unfortunate for everybody involved that Morgan Riley's gone down. I mean, we haven't even talked about backup goaltending. There's not really any point. Really, we're going to be on a big tangent. But I mean, there's some other things there that have not helped the Maple Leaf situation, and everybody's getting on them right now, including us. But I still think they're going to make the playoffs.
The thing for me is it's about finding that right balance, and as much as the league's sort of trending to skilled players, you still need to have that right balance, and right now I think the balance on the Leafs is off.
Yeah, I can see that, and I mean it's not gonna, whatever it is, it's not going to be an easy first round matchup if they get into the playoffs. I'm not sure, but I mean I think they get in a it's not going to be a fun matchup for them, which I think will raise other questions about what's going to happen in Toronto, which will make another fascinating offseason for sure. But let's get to the Vancouver Canucks, and I think we need to go back further because we have not gathered on the podcast. We had the emergency podcast that I talked about the Tyler Toffoli trade, but we have not talked about the Tyler Toffoli trade and his subsequent appearances in a couple of games with the Vancouver Canucks. So, Sean, Chris, Tyler, we'll start with any one of you three. How are you feeling? What did you think? Are you happy, unhappy? Where are you at now?
It's very similar to the JT Miller trade at this point. It's a bit of a risk with Toffoli not signed for next year, and you don't know whether or not the Canucks have the cap space to be able to bring him back. But when you bring in a player of his skill level, you can't help but get excited, especially with the Besser injury. He feels a need of getting more scoring, and even when Besser comes back, you now have a top six that is you can throw it against. You could throw it against any team in the NHL, and you'd be okay with it. If not feeling like you have an advantage. So it sucks to give up Tyler Madden, but the Canucks have a few different prospects, especially up front, that are showing very, very good promise. And with Adam Gaudette being a center, and they have basically three centers under 25 that are going to be with the team for the next five plus years likely. And then you've got the wings loaded up on younger players. Madden was expendable, so it sucks to give up those assets, but you have to pay to play. And Tyler Toffoli looks like he's going to be a very good fit for the Canucks this year, and hopefully through next year and beyond.
When we talk about rebuilding, it's not just rebuilding at the NHL roster level and fielding a team that can be competitive and make the playoffs and make a push deep into the playoffs, but it's also rebuilding the depth of the system that then puts you in a position to make these kinds of deals when you really need to make such a deal. The prospect pool is deeper. They have that prospect capital, so to speak. It's a phrase you hear often in baseball because there's no trading draft picks in baseball. Anytime there's trade, that involves usually minor league players. So, I said at the time on Twitter the price was heavy-ish. If Tyler Madden turns out to be quite something, everybody's going to be cringing over the transaction. And then even if the Canucks are able to re-sign Tyler Toffoli, I believe a conditional 4th-round pick goes back the other way as part of the trade. So there is definitely risk there, but it's a move they had to make. If they're serious about doing something in the playoffs, not just making it, but then going somewhat deep into the playoffs, they couldn't just take the status quo across the trade deadline. And then, of course, finding out about Brock Besser and the injury made this particularly essential.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add because Sean and Tyler both kind of hit on the points that I was going to hit on. But obviously, it's a calculated risk. But if it works out anywhere close to how the Miller acquisition has worked out, I'd say it's a win for the Canucks. And so far in the couple of games that we've seen it to Foley, it's looking good so far. Obviously, we don't know how he'll play over the long run and how the offseason is going to play out, but I think it's so far so good.
Just a quick comment on Tim Schaller. There was another piece in the deal that's expendable, but served the Canucks fairly well. Wish him well with the Kings. A good deal from their perspective as well to get their rebuild going.
Devin, what did you think?
Yeah, it seems like it's a good fit, especially with Besser out. And, you hope that Besser can get back to full health here or close to it so he can kind of go on this cup run with his team. But and if he comes back, that's a pretty deadly top 6 he got there. So whether or not Toffoli is going to re-sign with the Canucks is going to be, you never know. But with Pettersson and Hughes coming up here, which they could be wanting, between the two of them 20 plus mil between the two of them. Then I don't know if he'll have the chance to re-sign, but definitely gives you a good chance this year, and hopefully. You can get the goaltending to back them up with Demko, and we'll see how it goes.
And compare now, looking, because the debate was the price at the time, and compared to what we saw here at the trade deadline, looking at it from those eyes, did you feel that this now looks like a reasonable price, or is it fair to? Well, it's always going to be a debate, but in terms of the price comparison, where are you at now? Does it still feel steep for you compared to other things? Like Blake Coleman got Jersey a 1st-round pick as an example. There was a lot of 1st-round picks that went sailing out off the bookshelf today.
Yeah, I think the Canucks got ahead of the game and were able to get Toffoli at a cheaper price. When you look at what Pajot got, he was a 1st, a 2nd, and potentially a 3rd as well. That's insane. That's close to what Markstrom got last year. And Pajot, he's a great player and someone who's going to be good for the Islanders if they make the playoffs. Again, that's the key word there is if. And then they overpaid him on term and cap hit on that extension too. That blew my mind. And then you look at freaking Barclay Goodrow got a 1st-round pick. It's kind of crazy. We going back to what we were talking about with the Leafs and how they're a very super skilled team. That's also Tampa Bay. But they ended up basically spending 3 1st-rounders on 2 big players who are most likely sort of third line players or fringe 2nd line players. It's kind of crazy to see the different mindsets of these teams today.
You could probably make the argument that the Canucks did pay a steep price for Toffoli, but they definitely, looking back at how today played out, they did not have to pay the deadline premium.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and the Canucks are getting a guy with a Stanley Cup on his resume. So you factor that into the equation too, and it doesn't look like that bad a deal now.
Yeah, for sure. But the bigger news in Vancouver wasn't the trades. I guess I'm a little confused, have to admit. Here's Travis Green earlier today before the announcement happened. Travis Green was asked about Jacob Markstrom.
We always find it a little beneficial to come out a day early and get a sleep in and then practice, so it's a good skate today.
Is Markstrom fine for that stick in the mask?
Yeah.
Everything's fine there, no vision problems?
What do you think of win?
He said yes. Yeah, he's fine. But now we've learned that Markstrom could be out up to a month with an injury, which led to the acquisition of Louis Dominguez to back up Thatcher Demko. I feel like Canucks Twitter was holding their breath. Obviously, this is not great news. Where are we at here? Tyler, where are we at? Well, or whoever.
Oh, well, I mean, as far as him not revealing the news before the trade deadline, I'm sure that had to do with some negotiation leverage stuff going on there as they were completing the transaction.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's totally all that was. That was just a little bit of a smoke screen to make sure that they didn't give up leverage, which they were able to, because all they did was give up Zane McIntyre for Louis Dominguez. So they upgraded their backup goalie or third string goalie situation for basically not much at all. So I think that was well played by the Canucks organization. But the Markstrom injury is there definitely a concern, but when you've got Thatcher Demko, who's your backup and coming in, that relieves a little bit of the concern because he's got the pedigree, he's been developed well and properly. He just needs to find a way to take the bull by the horns and give the Canucks the goaltending that they need. That being said, the Canucks definitely need to batten down the hatches and stop giving up as many high danger scoring chances and as they have been with Markstrom, who has been arguably one of the best goalies in the league this year.
You could say that Green was being a little bit intentionally deceitful in that interview, but he wasn't actually lying, because it wasn't anything to do with the stick in the mask or anything like that. It was actually apparently a knee injury.
Right. So I'm not saying he needs to be forthright or anything. I had a midterm. I missed some things, so I was personally a little bit confused. But so I was also wondering there. But I look at this division right now, though, for the Pacific. We'll go through the division here in the last 10. The Oilers, well, they actually held their own without Connor McDavid. But other than Vegas, everyone has been pretty much at a 500 level the last 10. Oilers 5-4-1, Vancouver 4-4-2, Calgary was 5-5, Arizona 4-5-1. Those four. So if you can still keep at that pace, I don't think that this hurts Vancouver too much. As long as you keep pace with these other four teams and win the games the big games against Calgary and against Arizona that you have, you're fine. Mm-hmm. It's not like you need in this division to necessarily go on a huge run.
No, because none of the teams seem to be running away with it. None of the teams seem to want to be running away with it. But my only thing is, and I've said this a few times before, everybody wants to just declare Thatcher Demko, a solid NHL goalie, going to be a number one, all this. Let's slow down a minute here, okay? It's still been a small sample size. He has passed kind of every test that he's had to face so far in his NHL career. He won his first game and so on. And when Markstrom had to go back to Sweden, he held the fort through that stretch there earlier in the season. But now it's a huge, huge test. It's multiple weeks, most crucial time of the season, and then what if the defense gets depleted all of a sudden with an injury or two? I'm not going to say worried, but I'm concerned, certainly.
So, on that, today, do you think the Canucks did enough? Should the Canucks have made any other moves? Benning was asked about Robin Lehner. He basically said he didn't get in on that. I heard Elliot Friedman today, who was one of the stars, from what I understand, of the entire day. And his response was, what you saw Vegas gave up for Robin Lehner, you don't want to do that. And I would agree. But do you think the Canucks should have done more, or just after the 9-3 win, let's just see what we got here and ride the wave?
Well, I think there's two things that I look at. One, the talk about needing toughness, and the talk about them trying to acquire Wayne Simmonds. I think one part of that is, I think that deal was a lot bigger than people realize that fell apart. Just based off of my feeling from what Rick Dhaliwal was reporting and all that, I think that deal was almost more designed to help get Sven Baertschi off the books and then bringing in Wayne Simmonds would have been a nice nice cherry on top of that. But you also look at how the Canucks have played since that first Boston game. Is toughness an issue anymore? Not a chance. You have Bo Horvat fighting. You have Jake Virtanen fighting. You have Zach McEwen fighting. You have, I think everyone's fighting, really. Team toughness is not an issue with this team anymore. I think there was a bit of a mandate from, I don't even think it was from the coaches or the management. I think it came directly from the room, directly from the players, that we can't let Petey get manhandled like that without them answering the bell. You can't let Hughes get it doesn't even matter who it is now. They're standing up for each other, which is fantastic, because that's what you need. That's the mentality you need to be successful in the NHL, and specifically the playoffs. And then number two, with the goalie, you got to see what Demko has here. As much as you have, you're in the playoff race and all that, you have to give Demko the shot. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, the price on Lehner was just steep and weird, and you have some money laundering going on there with the Leafs, who shouldn't even have cap space. Hey, they traded for an injured player so they could go above the cap more, yet the Canucks are getting dinged for a deal they signed when it was legal. Like, the NHL needs to figure out what is cap circumvention and what isn't, and actually freaking fix it.
But this is very high on the list of Sean's irritations, by the way.
But that's besides the point. The price on getting someone who could push Demko was probably too much. Plus, again, Demko's done everything right. You got to give him the shot.
Especially if we're considering not bringing Markstrom back and protecting Demko for the Seattle expansion.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
And Domingue is not a guy that's going to come in and cause Thatcher Demko to be looking over his shoulder. I believe Jim Benning made a comment about that in his press conference today. So, you have some protection there, a guy with some NHL experience. Travis Green can run him out there for, a couple games, let's say, during Markstrom's absence. But, if you want to give Demko a shot, you want to give him a shot where he's not looking over his shoulder. I would certainly agree with that part of it.
Yeah, and, Devin, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, you got Louis Domingue in 2018-2019. He played 26 games when Vasilevsky went down. He won 21 of them, and he had a .908 save percentage. And, you want to give Demko the chance to show management, to show the Canucks fans and the team that he can take the ball and run with it. Especially with Markstrom potentially not coming back. I think this is a blessing in disguise to see what you have in Demko, especially at this time of year. I think it's first of all, getting Jim Benning, getting Louis Domingue, who is probably one of the best backups he could have gotten out of the trade deadline without, giving up something astronomical like Vegas did for Leonard. I think it was a great deal on his part. I'm not a big Jim Benning fan, but I thought he did a great job with doing that. As far as like potentially doing something else with the trade deadline, I thought that, you guys could probably gotten a depth defenseman, maybe a bit more depth within that, because like I remember hearing Brian Burke talk about his win in 2007 with the Ducks. He used 9 defensemen. Each team probably has maybe 7, 8 at best NHL defensemen that you can throw in on any given night. And so I don't know, and that's one thing I was happy to see that Brad Treliving did was address that need right before the playoff push, because you're going to need that. You're going to have injuries, and like Tyler said, it's going to be really interesting to see how Demko fares if, for instance, one of your top pairing or top 4 defensemen go down, and that defensive structure is not going to be there. So I think that's what you guys missed in this or today. But I don't know. I'm happy to see Demko and try and solidify himself, being like, hey guys, I'm still here. I don't think it's as dire as Tyler's saying, but I really do think that it's a blessing in disguise, trying to see what you have in Demko with the Seattle expansion coming, with the Markstrom contract looming within the offseason. So I thought you guys did a great job bringing in Domingue.
Because Benning has quite a lot of haters in regards to his free agent signings and trades and whatnot, and that he's only good for drafting, I think there's an argument to be made that he's actually won handily the last couple of trades that he's had to do. Maybe he wasn't great at the start of his Canucks tenure, but I would say he's vastly improved in the trading department.
Well, he's also dealing from not as much of a position of weakness lately as compared to before. You can definitely draw a connection there.
Yeah, he's dealing from a position of strength for sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
But to counteract that a little bit, I don't know if you were with JT Miller, if you were necessarily in a position of strength. It's a tough give up of a first round pick, but I think having the cupboard stocked a little bit helped a little bit. But I don't know. He's going to always get that hit for Olli Juolevi.
Mm-hmm.
That will never really be lived down. But I think overall, I don't think he's done that terrible of a job. Like the Juolevi draft, the Louis Eriksson signing will always live with him. But, you kind of, I don't know. I might be hot taking this a little bit, but you could make an argument that Benning has done a better job with the Canucks than Treliving has done with the Flames. You look at, why isn't Treliving hasn't necessarily worn the Sam Bennett draft? Because Bennett's playing in the NHL.
Yeah, I don't know, Kev. I think, again, it's early, but we were talking about this before, and in the beginning of this season, Benning really hasn't had any real wins. The JT Miller trade looks like his first real win as on the trade market. But other than that, he really didn't have one. Because you can
Can I just stop you right there, Sean? His first transaction that he made was dealing Ryan Kessler and brought back a whole bunch in that deal, and then subsequently they became other players. I still view that as a win in a situation where a guy wanted out, brought in some pieces to help them move it along for a couple of years.
Yeah, Nick Bonino was not a bad player to get.
Yeah, you could say he was able to do the best with that, but and again he wasn't dealing in a position of strength there. But in terms of like pure outright wins, that has really helped make the team better and put them in a position to succeed long term.
Yeah,
the only real win he has is that JT Miller trade.
What about Pearson and Goodbranson?
No, that's good. That was good, but I'm not sure Pearson signed for one more year after this. I don't know how much longer he's going to be around, but if anything, that just getting Goodbranson off the books was a win in itself, though. So
you could look at that like correcting a mistake. That one,
yeah, but if you look at basically since I would say about January of that season, you could really see the difference of moves that Benning had made, and he's had more moves that you could consider as wins than before. So I think it's the Canucks are trending in the right direction now. So I think it's no matter how this season turns out, whether they don't make the playoffs or they make the playoffs, and no matter how far they make it, I think they're trending in the right direction when you've got two franchise pieces in a number one center in Elias Pettersson and a true number one defenseman in Quinn Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're agreeing with me saying that he's improved then?
Well, that's what I never said he hadn't. I said that up until this season, he didn't really have a win, right? So but that JT Miller trade has really changed things, and hopefully we can continue to see some more improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually more so just making a personal poke at you because you like to do that to me, but you pulled a Chris answer and actually went all serious. So.
That's fantastic. I was just going to add on that transaction for JT Miller giving up the first round pick. Remember, conditional, so the Canucks don't make the playoffs this year. They hold on to the pick for the lottery, but also Jim Benning had enough hits on previous high draft picks in Pettersson and Hughes and Gaudette and Besser, and just to name a few that they were in a better position to be able to part with a first-round pick.
I just want to throw one underrated. I'm not going to say it's a win necessarily, but I do think it helped. The Fanick acquisition was frustrating at the time, but it did get Tyler Mott.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of an underrated trade, I would say, for Jim Benning.
Yeah. I'm not calling him the best GM in the league or anything like that, but I think, there's a lot of things he's always going to wear, but he's made some moves that I think just fly a little bit more under the radar than I think we acknowledge sometimes. That's kind of the unfortunate part of the Canucks market, and maybe part of the approach, and it would just make transition to the Flames with how Benning approaches things and how Brad Treliving approaches things, and they did maybe two acquisitions today, Erik Gustafsson and Derek Forbort. I'll just let's hear from Treliving if we can.
Well, we're happy with what we got accomplished. I think a big thing to remember is, strategically, we may have had to change gears a little bit the last 3 weeks with our injuries on the defense. So when you're sitting here and saying, okay, if you are going to look to add to your team and you've got specific assets to use, what's the best way to use them? And when we were hit with injuries on the blue line. Because when you look at it, we've lost 2 top 4 defensemen. And
yeah, that's basically some of what Brad Treliving had to say. So, Devin, looking back now, and did the Flames you felt that they did the right thing, getting depth on defense, but you've also mentioned, and I'm supporting you on this, that you felt that the Flames should sell. Were you happy with what the Flames have done today?
Yeah, I think so. I think with the Gio and Hamonic injury, they couldn't really do much, especially with us and still in the race and no one really taking hold of the Pacific Division. It kind of solidified us being, very similar to last year with getting Vandenberg as a depth defenseman. I think the cost that we gave, the picks that we gave up for Gustafsson and Forbort, I think were very on par with what we got back. Gustafsson, in 2018-2019 season, he was a 60-point player, 17 goals, 43 assists, and he had 18 points on the power play. Giving up a conditional 2020 third-round pick for him, I think that's a great acquisition for the Flames, and I thought he did a great job with that. And Forbort, he's played with Drew Doughty. He's playing the past 4 games. He played for 20-plus minutes, and so he can be counted on to be a solid defenseman and a defensive defenseman. And I'm really happy with what we got. I was kind of expecting and maybe a bit hoping that we could sell off TJ Brody at a premium with it being the trade deadline. But overall, I'm happy with the acquisitions. It's low cost, and you need defensive depth for playoff rounds. Like I said before earlier in this podcast, it is definitely a necessity, and injuries are going to happen between now and when the Stanley Cup is handed out, and you need to have that depth. So I thought that Tree did a great job with acquiring a bunch of defensemen, and eventually Gio sounds like he's on his way back within the next game or two. Hamonic, it sounds like he's a bit longer term and maybe might be ready for the playoffs, maybe not. I'm not counting on it, but as far as today goes, I thought he did a great job.
I think he did, about as well as he could. I mean, it wasn't realistic, I don't think, for the Flames to drop the bomb on it and make a huge deal. But they did, as Devin's talked about, it addressed some need to add on the back end, and so that it's good. I'm sure there's a segment of Flames fans out there that were itching for more. Every Canadian market, the general manager is under pressure to do something, make a splash, look like you're active. But sometimes the moves you don't make are the best moves too. So not a bad trade deadline for Calgary.
Sean, Chris?
Yeah, I like what they did. I think they you upgraded on Shillington to Gustafsson, a better version of Shillington, and then they got an okay replacement for Hamonic, who's going to be out a little bit longer term. So, and as Devin said earlier, you kind of need 7-8 defensemen to go that you're comfortable playing to go into the playoffs. So I think they've got that now.
And yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I agree with everyone else's takes.
Yeah, I mean, I really wasn't expecting much. I don't know what the Flames. This team really didn't do anything one way or the other to kind of force Treliving's hand. You lost at Boston, you beat Detroit, you looked bad and really didn't look good in both of those games. I mean, I don't know if this team is a playoff team at this point in time. But, at least forward depth, I think the Flames, if you were going to add one more thing, it probably would have been a right-handed forward shot. That's still been a mystery pickup for them. But, they're like the Canucks. They just need to keep kind of keep afloat here, but they're in a tougher position because they've got Tampa and Boston coming up, where the Canucks are on the Eastern Canadian road trip that includes Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto, which should be 2 wins, but the Flames stumbled through that too. So you have to be careful like that if you're from the Canucks perspective. But, I guess they're kind of just keeping afloat. And my only question with Gio is he pushing himself to come back too early? And I say that because this reminds me a little bit of what Mike Smith did a couple of years ago, where he came back and he wasn't ready. I'm just a little worried that Gio might be doing the same thing.
I think it's a valid worry, but it's I don't know. I feel like he's a seasoned veteran, knowing that his age and the amount of time that's left on his contract. It's not like he's this is his last season, so he's not trying to push to try and do something right away. I mean, obviously you kind of are with getting up in age, but I don't know. I think I don't see that as a worry. I feel like they're smart enough. Both the Flames and Gio are smart enough to realize where they're at right now, as a bubble team. And I don't know. I just don't see them pushing him to do something he's not comfortable with.
I'm with Devin there. I mean, he's a veteran player. He knows his body really well. He knows what's required to get back into playing condition. I do see where you're coming from, Kevin. I mean, Gio's the captain of the team and such an important piece, and probably feeling like he's got to get back in there and everything like that. But this is not some early 20s overly ambitious type that thinks he's superhuman. I think he'll be smarter about it and come back at the appropriate time.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're rushing him back at all. I think they're just he should be good.
Okay. Well, hopefully you all are right, and I'm just asking because I think that's who knows there. Yeah, I don't. I mean, we'll see. I think the big story will be the Flames will be the off season. I think that's where we're really going to see some interesting things. But the Edmonton Oilers, had made some moves, and Mike, it's kind of weird. Almost the turning point of their year in a lot of ways was that 8-3 win there in Calgary a few weeks earlier this month. But they got Mike Green. They got Tyler Ennis. They got Athanasiou. Oh my gosh! I knew I was gonna. I was finding some way to go another way around it, and I couldn't. I stumbled through it. You know who they got? No, I'll have to. I got to try to pronounce it. But anyway, while I try to figure out how I pronounce a certain person's name, do you feel that the Oilers they improved? They got better players. But are they in a better playoff position?
Kevin, I'm going to help you out with the pronunciation of it all.
No, I'm being stubborn. Andreas Athanasiou. Thank you. I did it.
There you got it.
Yes, I just was because I had a couple things in my head. Andreas Athanasiou I was having a tough time. I needed to do it, Devin. It was about pride, but thank you.
That's valid. I think that Athanasiou, he's a very speedy player, and I think he'll be able to keep up with McDavid on the rush. With adding Ennis, that's a little bit more depth instead of Nygaard and Sheehan, and counting on Yamamoto for some bottom support there. I don't know. I guess Mike Green, at the tail end of his career, we'll see exactly how Green kind of integrates into Edmonton. I just don't. I like the acquisitions, but once again I don't see that character depth of having a bit more grit, a bit more playoff style players that they've added. They added towards. I feel like Holland really showed the fact is wanting to show McDavid that they're as serious about getting him into the playoffs and giving him a chance to shine and to have that chance at a cup. Because I truly feel that within the next year or two, that if they don't show enough towards getting towards a cup or getting towards the second or third round, then I feel like he's gonna want to ask for a trade. So I think the acquisitions are good, but they're not fully where I think that Holland needs to be with showing McDavid that they're a serious playoff team and that they have the right players involved with playoff hockey. But I mean, good on them for getting some depth and getting some speed to add to McDavid's skill.
Yeah, the speed of Athanasiou and the skill of Tyler Ennis is a good add for them. Whether or not that translates to making them a better team, especially for the playoffs, I think that's still to be determined. Ennis isn't the biggest player. Athanasiou may have some good hands and some good speed, but I don't know if he knows how to use it correctly, especially if he has to defer to McDavid for the puck carrying, because McDavid is the guy who should be carrying the puck. So it'll be interesting to see how that does. That could turn out really well for them, but I'm not sold on it just yet.
Whatever the case, I don't think it's a big risk move, any of them, for Edmonton to go that route and try and do something to bolster their team and improve their chances. If I were an Oilers fan, I'd be pretty satisfied with how today went.
Chris? Did we lose Chris?
He's still on mute.
Okay.
Maybe Bowie showed up.
Oh, hi, Bowie. Bowie is a cat, everyone who doesn't know. I'm kind of getting the sense, the way that I'm seeing the Pacific lineup, that the Oilers and Canucks seem to be that first-round matchup. That's what I'm getting. I'm getting that sense. Do you, at this point, how are you, like, it's very early, we're not even close to we just passed the trade deadline, but at this point, is this a matchup that concerns you as Canucks fans?
No.
You think you can handle
No, it's not.
Okay.
Wow, that was very straight to the point.
You're always going to worry about dealing with McDavid and Draisaitl, but the Canucks have two good defense pairs that are going to be able to match up with them speed wise. You've got Stetcher, who works his butt off playing with Edler, and then you've got Quinn Hughes, who's become very good at using his speed as a tool for defending. So I really think that it will be a hard fought and likely a 6-7 game series. But I just like, especially if Markstrom's healthy, I like the goaltending the Canucks have over the Oilers, and I like the Canucks forward depth over the Oilers and their defensive depth. So it'll just come down to whose star players can play better. But I think the Canucks can. I wouldn't be too overly worried. I'd be more worried about potential maybe Vegas matchup. I just think they play a much better style for the new NHL with using their speed and grit at that point.
Yeah, 100% agree on all that. I would say that trying to have home ice advantage for that series would be huge in terms of matchups against McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's any team in the Pacific that I have any apprehension on facing in the playoffs, it's Vegas. As far as Edmonton, like if we can contain Draisaitl and McDavid, I feel pretty good about our chances.
Quick side note on that: if that's a playoff matchup, where I sit up here in northwestern BC, driving distance to Edmonton's actually shorter than Vancouver. a lot of Oilers fans here, so things could get a little tense in the Terrace area. Certainly, if that's a playoff matchup.
Am I out of whack here? Thinking I've concluded that the top three are Vegas, Canucks, and the Oilers. Am I out of whack? Is anyone seeing it differently at this point?
Well, everything's so tight, it could change, but it looks that way. It's been that way for a while now, it would seem.
Yeah, as far as momentum, I think that's accurate.
I have a hard time. Well, I don't know. It's I agree with Tyler that it's so tight. You never really know when you can't really tell at this point. But I think if all 4 or 5 Pacific teams are playing at their best, I think those are the 3 best teams.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that what really will separate people, our teams, from each other, are going to be injuries, and I think with Markstrom going out, Demko, if he can run with it, then that's great. But I don't know if Demko can't, then I don't see Canucks being up there.
Okay, all right, so. We've got one bit of a descent, but we'll see here. And I was one of them that kept the Flames. I had the Flames in the playoffs, the Oilers not. So I'm going to be eating a lot of crow. And if this, well, I won't eat a lot of crow, but you know what I mean. So let's just quickly go and talk about what else happened here. We're not going to go through every single trade. You can Google that if you want to do that. But what were some of your takeaways? Like, what was something that you felt, what surprised you in a good way? We usually do winners or losers. People do that. I don't really want to. It's hard to do that so early. But what kind of a surprised you, or what impressed you?
The fact that Marleau ended up in Pittsburgh, like, you gotta kind of root for the guy at this point in his career. Like, if Pittsburgh can pull out a deep run, then, you got to feel good for Marleau trying to get one last kick at the cup.
Also a little surprised Pittsburgh got Connor Sherry back. That's wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah, that was a surprise as well.
Yeah, so pretty busy trade deadline for Jim Rutherford, and for Penguins fans, they got to be pretty pleased with what they've added there to bolster their chances come the playoffs. How about Ilya Kovalchuk going to the Washington Capitals? I mean, that to me is just like, whoa, wow.
Yeah.
Didn't really do much for Montreal. Habs kind of given up on that one there, but getting Kovalchuk and Ovechkin on the same team is certainly tantalizing.
Yeah,
I don't know if I agree with you.
Carolina stocking up, getting Vincent Trocheck, and then Brady Shea, as well as Sami Vatanen. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the East.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you there, Tyler. I feel like Kovalchuk kind of brought his stock back up in Montreal right when he got there. He was on a tear for a bit. But yeah, I think that Pittsburgh and Carolina, they had great trade deadline acquisitions, and Rodriguez, I don't think he's flown under the radar as a good bottom 6 player. Like, he's gritty, he hits a lot, and he has some skill to him as well. But I don't know, I'd say Vegas is up there too with the acquisition of Lehner and Cousins. That was massive for
and Martinez
for them.
Yeah, Martinez too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's done well. I think he has 3 points in the past 3 games. So, yeah, I think that's Vegas. It kind of scares me now. I'm going to throw someone else in there because I know we always at this point we do the cup run, but on the other end of that, I actually was pretty impressed with what the Ottawa Senators have been able to do. And there is a possibility that they could end up with 3 lottery picks in this 2020 draft. Which is crazy because they could get the first overall pick, the second overall pick, and the 5th overall pick within this deep draft. And it blows my mind how well they did and how well what's the GM's name?
Dorian.
Yeah, Dorian. Yeah. How well he did, because within 2020 he has 3 firsts, he has 4 seconds and 2 thirds, and then next year he has 1 first, 3 seconds, and 1 third. And when he made the Carlson trade last year, I feel like everybody kind of shit on him a little bit, but he's done a really great job with managing assets and the potential for 3 of the top 5 overall picks. If everything comes up Ottawa Senators, then he might have a billboard saying let's give him a key to the city.
Let's be honest though, if there was a team that needed that luck, it was Ottawa.
Yeah, that's true. They have been through hell. Their owner is not exactly the smartest man on earth, or the brightest PR man on earth. So yeah, no, I would agree with that. And they've had that arena is in Lord knows where. They need a new arena. So yeah, I think to me, I think that they did well. What was a disappointment? What kind of was like, I really was surprised that this didn't happen, or who needed to do a little bit more that didn't, or...
I'm surprised Colorado didn't make more of a push. Like, yes, they're a strong team already, but I thought that they would have tried to make more of an effort to bolster their lineup. I think the only position that they got was Namasekov, or whatever his last name is?
Namestnikov.
Yeah.
Heidi didn't think that was a name.
I think that's that's an underrated move. I like him as a player. But I wouldn't say, for me, not necessarily a disappointment, but it's just weird when you look at it. Tampa Bay was able to basically turn JT Miller, Nolan Foote, and a first-round pick into 2 third-liners and like a couple thirds in Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow. Like, I understand what they're trying to do. I just think they overpaid, and it just when you spend money paying for size, I think that overpay for size is never a good thing.
Going back to our. Sorry, go ahead, Devin.
I was just going to say that it's funny, at the beginning of this podcast, you're talking about role players and people who go through the wall to win. And I feel like I don't know much about Goodrow, but I know that Blake Coleman is one of those players, and you pay for that, and let alone pay more for that at July 1 and the trade deadline. Those are the 2 scheduled places that you overpay, and especially when you're in the win now mode of, if you think about where you are with Tampa Bay, you got swept in the first round after having a hell of a season, a season record season. You got to show that you're willing to try as much as you can to improve your team. And what more can you get out of your top 6, really? And so what are you going to pay for? You're going to pay for a role player, and you're going to pay for I think the thing about Coleman is that he's not a UFA at the end of the year. He still has term, and I think that you pay for more, you pay more for that at this time of year than anything else, especially for I guess, like I said, a role player, and he hits a lot, he shoots a lot, and he has a lot of skill. So I don't know. It's kind of funny how, you were talking about role players and the players that you want in your lineup, but yes, it was an overpay, but was it much of an overpay? I don't know. I guess you'll find out and see. But I think Blake Coleman, he's a great player, and I think that he was a great acquisition for Tampa Bay. So we'll see how well they do.
I think I'm siding with Kev. I think I'm siding with Devin more than I am with Sean right now.
I'm not saying that that they shouldn't go out and get those players. I'm just saying that paying first round picks for them, I think, is not the way to do it, and especially when they basically traded away someone who does that in JT Miller, right? So I think for me, that's just the biggest. The biggest thing is more just understanding the price versus of what you should be paying versus overpaying. So I know Tampa's in a win now situation. So if they can get through and get to a cup final and potentially win it, then it's definitely worth it. But if they don't and they burn and crash and burn again, you just wasted a year on some draft picks. So it'll all come down to how deep they go in the playoffs.
And they gave up another first-round pick, really, in Nolan Fudd. So, like, it's not a future first-round pick. It's a pretty high prospect. Like, if it was Blake Coleman for a first-round pick, I'd be okay. That's high, but I can understand it. But Blake Coleman and adding a Nolan Fudd in there, I think, that's a lot.
It all depends on how it plays out, but maybe this will end up being very similar to how Higgins and Lapierre worked for the Canucks in 2011.
That's true.
You never know.
But the prices again were much different.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking prices. I was talking more so how they fit in with the lineup.
Yeah.
And the thing to remember, guys, is that banners fly forever. You look at it's a different circumstance, but you look at Chicago winning 3 cups, and you're paying Seabrook, you're paying Taves and Kane all that money, but I mean you got 3 cups out of them. Are you really, as a Tampa Bay fan, going to be complaining about them peaking at the end of the year and showing everybody that you're a force to be reckoned with for this year and years to come with Kucherov and the likes of Hedman and Stamkos? I guess not twilighting yet, but I don't know. I just feel like the acquisitions are, yes, they're high, but I mean you gotta strike while they are while you're doing really well. And Blake Coleman, he was overpaid, but man, I feel like they're peaking at the right point right now, and they're a force to be reckoned with. I as a Leafs fan am terrified if they play Tampa Bay or Boston, and Boston I think they had a good trade deadline as well. So it's just whether or not where you are as an organization and where you are as a fan base. I feel like that is where the GMs are looking and where ownership is looking towards being like, okay, let's do this. Let's absolutely do this. And I feel like that's where Carolina's at right now too, with getting Trocheck and solidifying their back end there with Dougie Hamilton and Pesce being out, and getting Vatanen and who's the last guy?
Shea.
Brady
Shea.
Brady Shea, especially under contract for $5 million for, I think it's 5 years that he's being he has left in his contract, and he's a solid defenseman. So I don't know. It's all about where you're at as an organization.
One thing I'll say before Tyler jumps in, this is I'll say this: of the top four, the Pittsburghs, Washingtons, Bostons, and Tampas in the East, if I wanted to face one team, it would be Tampa. And I think that 4-0 sweep is going to be in their heads in this first round so much. That pressure on Tampa Bay is going to be like no other team. I actually do think that they can be had in the first round. If I'm Toronto, I would want to play Tampa Bay. I actually think that might be to their advantage.
Well, anything but Boston,
yeah,
would be key, right?
Yeah. But I think from a psychological level, I just think there's so much going into this play. Tampa Bay at this point, there's no team under more pressure coming into this playoffs than Tampa Bay, I would argue.
It's a pretty good argument.
They have the pressure of being in the playoffs and going deep in the playoffs. Like Stamkos has been there. I think Hedman's been there. They've got some veteran leadership there that can calm things down. If there's any team that would be able to handle it, it is Tampa.
But that's a lot of stress to come off from a year ago. If that's, if it was 2 years ago, it's last year, it's still fresh. Like you want to just wipe that out of the way, get it out of the way, or it just lingers. I mean, it's an important playoffs for Tampa is what I'm saying. Anyway, I feel like I'm overrunning Tyler here.
No, that's all right. I was, you're asking me about, disappointments from the trade deadline. Minnesota didn't do anything today. They did make their deal to get Galchenyuk and a couple other pieces, including a conditional first-round pick for Jason Zucker. But if I were a Minnesota Wild fan, I'd be getting pretty frustrated with. They just seem to be going nowhere fast.
Spinning those, they're definitely spinning tires this season for sure.
Yeah.
I'll just say go ahead, Devin.
It's just interesting to note that there are rumors out there for the trade for Parise and Andrew Ladd was out there, and that was a potential trade in the summertime and even last year at the trade deadline. That didn't actually go through today, which is disappointing. But I feel like Bill Guerin is, he got a bit of a shit sandwich with the contracts that he has there, coming in as a new GM halfway through the year, and I don't know, he's still solidifying himself and trying to figure out which direction to go. And you have it's a bit of a different circumstance with Stevie Yzerman down in Detroit, but it's you have two kind of two newish GMs trying to figure out their way within kind of an unfortunate situation. And I give credit to Bill Guerin to trying and doing something, because obviously there was something that was there, and unfortunately it didn't transpire. But who knows, in the off season it could happen.
I will say this, to me, if I'm the Flames, I think Bruce Boudreau might be an interesting fit here for a head coach. Just saying. There for a head coach, not here. I live in Vancouver, for the love of God. But the weird one for me was the Wayne Simmons situation. Like that whole situation was really weird. There's more to meet the eye than that. But the last place I expected him to end up was the Buffalo Sabres today.
Yeah.
I don't know why Buffalo made that trade, but I totally understand why Wayne Simmons would have to go there. It sounds like he's going to get top 6 minutes, so it allows him to build up another case for people for GMs to pay him in the summer. So I think it could work out well for him. I don't know how well it'll work out for the Sabres, though.
Well, they are in the hunt right now, so maybe they think that they're that close that they were just one piece away from fully making it to the playoffs.
They're 8 out. They're long. They're technically in the hunt. They need to get on a run if they're going to make it. They need some things to happen.
It kind of makes sense to me. At first, I was very questionable about exactly what Jason Botterill and Wayne Simmons were thinking, but listening to the insiders today talk about it, they were saying that they would love to have Wayne Simmons in the room. I guess he's a big room guy, and the other thing is that Wayne Simmons, he waived his no trade clause to go there because it is close to home for him. It's only an hour and a half away from where he lives. He has 2 young girls. He mentioned that he had 2 dogs that he wanted to be close with, and so it kind of made sense. And especially, like Sean said, he's going to get top 6 minutes. Potentially playing with Jack Eichel, and it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, if you take like a step back from a hockey aspect, it does make sense. But within the hockey aspect, it makes sense in the sense that like they've had a losing mentality there, and it might be hard for the core or the room to get past that. And I feel like there's a very similar cloud over the Flames dressing room right now. And if we got Wayne Simmons, I would have totally understand because of the character that he brings to that room. So maybe not this year, it does make sense, but I feel like they'll re-sign him, and that they'll have him in the room and make him kind of a core without being a part of the core, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Is there anything we
missed? Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said. Like I've been saying all podcast. I think it's finding that right mix of skill guys and guys willing to go through the wall. Wayne Simmons is a guy who's willing to go through the wall.
Just to counteract Kevin's point about they would need to go on a run, because of them being in the Atlantic, they would only actually have to leapfrog Florida. So if Toronto struggles, and right now Toronto is 4-5-1 on their past 10, and Buffalo's 6-3-1. So if Buffalo continues their hot streak and Toronto stumbles, you never know. Might change pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's only two teams in front of them they got to pass, the Leafs and the Panthers, and Buffalo at this moment 6 points back with a game in hand on the Leafs.
Yeah, you could say that about
out
Montreal
of the realm
too.
of possibility.
Yeah, well, and you could say that about Montreal too, maybe, but they sold. But who knows? I guess everyone has.
Well, they have one more game played than Toronto, so it's the opposite equation there in terms of amount of time remaining for them.
My only last takeaway is I just want to say I feel like people are sleeping on the Philadelphia Flyers. That I'm looking forward, if it's Philly-Pittsburgh in the first round, I think that's going to be a really fun matchup. Was my only final takeaway I wanted to get. They've won 3 in a row, 7-3. They still got some really good pieces there. They're a fun hockey. That Pennsylvania series would be a fun series. So I do hope it happens. Is there any other takeaways that
the Isles fighting them for that third spot is definitely going to be something to watch with the season coming to a close for sure.
And the Islanders swept the Penguins last year, so they have that in there.
Well, the whole Metro division is insanely tight because the Jackets, the Blue Jackets are right there, the Hurricanes are right there. Don't sleep on the Rangers. Although there we go. We haven't even talked about the Rangers. Them re-signing Kreider and then announcing that Igor Shesterkin and Pavel Buchnevich were in a car accident. Shesterkin's now out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And like not to mention the depth moves that they made with Nate Thompson, Derek Grant, and Nathan Noel. I think that Derek Grant, he's an underrated bottom six centerman. He was here in Calgary, and I really enjoyed watching him play. And Nate Thompson, he brings a lot of grit to it. So with the history of Philadelphia and the grittiness of Pittsburgh and Columbus, like I agree with Kevin. I wouldn't sleep on them, because if you do, I feel like they're streaking right now, especially with Kevin Hayes being their number 2 center. Like, oh man, I don't know. I feel like they're definitely a dark horse to get in the playoffs for sure.
That's interesting. And Columbus has lost 8 in a row. Anyway, is there anything else we need to talk about on this?
No, I think we covered. Yeah, I think we covered most of it.
All right. How do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter at Tnoble, Tnoble.
I'm on all social media at Schneids.
I am GordHow09 on Twitter.
I am KVOLE on Twitter. Heidi is Heidi Amazeballs. Also, subscribe on your favorite podcast. I forget to mention that. Apple, Google, Spotify. Leave reviews. Say nice things about us. Tell your friends about us, etc. And we will talk to you all next weekend. Bye for now. And always remember...